Back when I was working a part-time gig as a waitress, I spotted my boyfriend at some rager's birthday bash. And that's when I learned he actually hailed from a wealthy clan. He'd always run his mouth about how roses were a total waste, calling them useless and impractical. Yet, that very night, he had the gall to order 999 roses to celebrate some other girl's birthday. And get this, it was my birthday too. I kept my cool, watching everything unfold in silence before eventually walking away. Later, I blocked every single one of his contacts and bounced from town. That was the moment he completely lost it. I first met Darren back in college during a side hustle at a little campus cafe. The first time I laid eyes on him, he was rocking a crisp white shirt and sporting such striking features that he could have been lifted straight out of a campus-lit novel. This was the kind of guy who hustled hard, funding his own education without any handouts. As we got acquainted, we swapped numbers, hit the library for study sessions, and even snagged extra gigs together. Thanks to his killer looks, everyone on campus knew the hotshot working at that cafe, and people would literally line up just to get a peek or his number. At first, he politely declined the advances, but when it got too much, he casually pushed me forward and declared, "She's my girl." I was totally caught off guard and almost protested, but the sincere look in his eyes made me shut up and go along with it. Before long, he admitted his true feelings, and what started as a sort of pretend fling morphed into the real deal. After graduation, we pooled our resources, rented a cramped apartment, and moved in together. Darren, an orphan with no family support, and I, coming from a seriously modest background, both knew what money meant. With city expenses through the roof and us as fresh grads barely worth a dime, our weekends were swallowed up by extra jobs. Each cent saved was for our dream wedding fund. So when I landed a temporary gig paying a jaw-dropping $200 an hour, I was over the moon. But then I saw Darren, who was supposed to be logging overtime at that same banquet, and my grin froze. Always the frugal dude, Darren had ditched his usual plain look for a tailored black suit, his hair slicked back to reveal his forehead. He stood tall and cool, his proud expression radiating an untouchable aura. If it weren't for that all-too-familiar face, I might not have recognized him. Surrounded by snobby rich folks all vying for his attention, he regarded them with cold indifference, like some deity looking down on mere mortals. I was completely stunned until my coworker Tasha nudged me and whispered, "Hey, you okay?" I shook my head, eyes glued to Darren, who now seemed like a total stranger. My voice trembled as I asked, "Who is he?" Tasha leaned in and, lowering her voice, murmured, "They say he's the scion of the richest family in this city." I stared at Darren, the same boyfriend I'd spent 4 years with, the orphan I'd pitied, only to realize he was actually an heir. Instantly, I whipped out my phone and fired off a message. And Darren, who'd been lounging lazily amidst a crowd, glanced at his phone when it buzzed. A nearby voice teased, "Who's that?" After a quick glance, he nonchalantly replied, "Just spam, nothing important." Hearing that made me feel like I'd just been dumped into an icy abyss. To him, I was nothing more than insignificant. In those 4 years, I'd never even known his true story, and I suddenly felt utterly pathetic, as if every effort had been wasted. The banquet buzzed around me, yet none of it belonged to me. I stood there silently watching as an elegant woman in a stunning evening gown sat next to Darren, her proud expression and flawless makeup making her look like a straight-up princess from a fairy tale. Then Tasha wheeled a massive 5-tiered cake into the center of the room, its sweet aroma of cream and fruit filling the air. One by one, guests began handing over their gifts to the woman, while Darren orchestrated the grand finale by signaling for someone to bring in 999 roses. The woman was so overwhelmed she clutched her hand over her mouth, tears welling up, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Meanwhile, I stood there among a few folks in mascot costumes, awkwardly holding a bunch of roses. My eyes stung, but not a tear fell. I couldn't even put into words what I felt in that moment. Peering out from behind my costume, I watched Darren like I was seeing him for the first time. I couldn't help but remember our first Valentine's Day when we'd gone shopping and I begged him to pick up some roses off the street. He flatly refused, insisting, "Roses don't mean love. They're just some slick marketing ploy to brainwash girls, so they're not romantic. They're a waste of money." I was pretty upset back then, even though, truth be told, he wasn't entirely off base, because I still longed for a proper bouquet from my boyfriend. Later, when I was sulking, Darren plucked a piece of wild grass from the park and twisted it into a simple ring for me. I got so choked up that I cried, even feeling guilty for being a little childish. Now, staring at the whole scene, it all struck me as downright ridiculous. He never really thought buying roses was a waste, so maybe getting them for me was the ultimate misfire. The banquet was alive with celebration, but it had nothing to do with me. I wrapped up my shift, cashed my check, and left. By the time I got back to our rundown apartment, it was nearly midnight. Darren wasn't home, and I was completely exhausted. I collapsed on the couch. It was my birthday, and I'd planned to use that sweet gig money to treat myself to a cake and a small gift. But on the way home, I felt totally zoned out and just went straight back without any stops. As I looked around at our familiar furniture and decorations, I thought about how we'd built this life together over the years, even promising to eventually save up and buy a home. That promise had been my rock, even on my birthday. So when I saw that $200 an hour job, I couldn't say no. After all, what else could I do? Had I not gone, I wouldn't have uncovered the truth. But would that have let me keep lying to myself? I sat there on the couch, hugging my knees, not knowing how long I'd been lost in thought before I heard the door creak open. Darren was back, swapping his luxurious suit for his usual white shirt, looking just like the ordinary guy I thought I knew. I stared at him in silence as he changed his clothes and walked over to give me a hug. I pushed him away, eyeing the exhaustion on his face, and asked, "Why didn't you reply to my message?" His expression stiffened for a split second before he mumbled, "Sorry, didn't see it. You have no idea how much overtime I've been slogging through today." If I hadn't seen him earlier at that party, basking in everyone's attention, I might have believed his lame excuse. "Do you even remember?" I said dryly. "Today is my birthday." For 3 whole years, he'd always made a big deal out for my birthday. But now it was clear he either forgot or got tired of me. He blew off his official girlfriend's birthday while going all out for someone else with $9.99 roses. My nose stung with unshed tears, but I held them back. Darren mumbled another apology and promised to make it up to me the next day with a proper gift. I stayed silent, and he assumed I was just bummed about not getting a present. So he half-heartedly tried to comfort me before dozing off. I didn't throw a tantrum or say a word. I just watched him sleep. The face I'd memorized over and over, now seeming completely unfamiliar. We'd had our share of fights and even temporary breakups, but this time felt different. "Darren, this time, I was seriously done with you." Quietly, I handed in my resignation at work without telling him and booked a train ticket out of town. As I left, I took one last lingering look at the city where my dreams with Darren had begun. I was once young and naive, thinking I could spend my whole life with him and build a home in this bustling metropolis. But in the end, it turned out to be nothing more than a solitary dream. I dragged my suitcase onto the train, and even though it went against my better judgment, I sent him one last message before I blocked him on every social media platform. This whole charade of pretending to be broke was over. Life isn't some movie, and no one's meant to spiral into a 2 or 3 year depression over a failed relationship, not even me. I pulled myself together, updated my resume, and dove headfirst into job hunting. Even though I wasn't a fresh out of college newbie, my bachelor's degree didn't give me much of an edge. Day after day, I kept sending out applications and showing up for interviews. Luckily, I'd managed to save a decent stash during my years with Darren, hoping we'd eventually use it to build our dream home. Even though I was out of work for a spell, I wasn't broke. Soon enough, I landed a new job and got back into a steady routine, commuting between the office and my rental, living quietly on my own. I figured this big old world was large enough that after leaving that city, I'd never have to cross paths with Darren again. But fate, or maybe just plain irony, had other plans. At an interview at my new company, I ran into him again. Darren was sitting in the manager's office, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that made him look every bit the sophisticated guy I'd seen at that party. Of course, he had never really been some poor kid in the first place. I handed him the documents, doing my best to act like I didn't notice him, and maintained a strictly professional vibe. Just as I was about to leave his office, I felt someone grab my wrist. I looked down and, following the grip, found myself face to face with Darren. His expression was blank, but his grip tightened as he pulled me closer. I tried to break free, but the difference in our strength made any resistance pointless. The office was empty, and as Darren's eyes filled with frustration, he said in a flat tone, "Cut it out, all right?" I stayed silent, my face a mix of resignation and indifference. Darren looked down at me like I was just a kid throwing a tantrum. "Stop it, okay? I was wrong. Just stop," he said dismissively as if I were the unreasonable one. I let out a bitter laugh. "Who the hell are you blaming? You know damn well it's you." His hand, which had been reaching for me, froze for a moment before he placed it on my head as if to soothe me. His voice was unnervingly calm. "Is it really just because of this? Come on, don't be mad. Just chill, all right?" No real explanation, no proper apology. "What about the roses?" I pressed, staring at him, desperate for a genuine answer. His face remained as impassive as ever. "Oh, they're just from a childhood friend," he replied, as if it meant nothing. "You ditched me on my birthday, celebrated hers with 999 roses, and you call that just a friend? That's not what you think," he added, his tone icy and detached. My chest tightened and tears began welling up. "Do you even remember that in all our years together, you never gave me roses for my birthday or Valentine's Day?" I managed to choke out. I let his words convince me. I'd always insisted I didn't need roses, but really, who doesn't want a sweet bouquet on a special day? "You like roses? I'll have them delivered right now," he said earnestly. I stared at him, this guy who still didn't seem to get what he'd done. Maybe I was wrong from the start. "You don't love me," I said, shaking off his grip and moving toward the door. "I'm done, Darren." He hesitated, almost ready to say something more, but before he could, Tyson's voice cut in. "Yo, the meat's ready," as he strolled in with a mischievous grin. Tyson, my ever-charming coworker, had just waltzed in and clearly was trying to rile Darren up. Darren's face darkened as he glared at Tyson. "Why is he here?" he snapped. Tyson raised an eyebrow and shot back, "Why wouldn't I be here? Don't you think your ex should keep his distance?" Darren's expression twisted further, his tone sour. "You told me you loved me, Darren," he mumbled, and my voice turned ice cold. "Listen up. You've been hiding things and lying since day one. Now you waltz back like some grand gesture expecting me to fall for it? I'm not going to keep orbiting around you like some damn planet. I can't live without you. That's just ridiculous." Darren's eyes widened in panic as I continued. "There's no chance for us anymore. From the moment we reconnected and you dismissed years of lies with one careless sentence, we were finished." Darren grabbed my shoulders, his eyes flashing with desperation. "Listen, I love you. I really do. I just—" I cut him off coldly. "You don't love me. You only see me as a toy. Admit it, Darren. You never loved me. You just love yourself and you're coming back because you can't handle losing me." He tried to scramble for an explanation, spitting out meaningless words in a desperate bid to justify himself, but I wasn't having any of it. I told him flatly to scram, slammed the door in his face, and walked away. At work that very day, I threw myself into my tasks, hoping to bury the pain. But it wasn't long before trouble found me. Once friendly colleagues started targeting me. Projects I submitted were repeatedly shot down and sent back for revisions, and I was singled out to stay late every night. The hushed after-hours chatter would stop the moment I walked into a room, and I knew all of it was Darren's doing. After 4 years together, I understood him too well. Beneath his indifferent exterior, he harbored grudges. What he'd once spewed at others, he now directed solely at me. That night, like clockwork, I was left alone in the office to slog through overtime. The empty room echoed with silence as my mind drifted back to the early days of our relationship, back when Darren was the epitome of chivalry. In those first moments, he'd patiently explain assignments to me in the library and even tap my head with a pen to snap me out of a daydream. Maybe, just maybe, there was a time when he genuinely cared, but now I didn't even care to figure it out. A lie is a lie, no matter how fancy the wrapping. Its essence never changes. I was so worn out from relentless overtime that I barely finished my work when the balding, middle aged department manager summoned me for one of his classic lectures. It was nothing more than a barrage of petty criticisms. But as I watched his flushed face contort while he spewed insults, clearly trying to curry favor with Darren, the scene struck me as absurdly comical. Before I knew what hit me, the manager dumped a scalding cup of coffee all over my carefully styled hair. The hot liquid cascaded down my face, soaking my clothes, leaving me looking like a complete mess. As the door creaked open, Darren strolled in, accompanied by the girl from his birthday party, both of them drenched in coffee. I felt an overwhelming rush of humiliation. Darren shot a brief glance at me before shifting his attention to the manager, who immediately scrambled up, bowing and groveling in Darren's presence. Darren, barely masking his disdain, motioned for the girl to take a seat and then launched into a discussion about work matters with the manager. I stood there, invisible, as if I didn't exist. The office felt like it housed only the two of them and the girl, who smiled sweetly at me and handed me a pack of tissues. I hesitated for a moment before accepting them. After wrapping up the conversation, Darren turned to me with a warning tone. "If you can't handle the job, just quit." I felt suffocated. Every bit of it had been orchestrated by him, the manager merely a puppet to please him. The sheer injustice stung, and though tears threatened to spill, I swallowed them back. After leaving the office, I gradually calmed down. That hot coffee had jolted me awake enough to realize I had to quit. The resignation process was swift. In no time, I packed my things and left the company. Having quit 2 jobs in less than 6 months, I decided it was time to take a break. A much-needed vacay to reset my mind. While I was escaping reality with a hot pot dinner and some shopping with a friend, Darren reappeared. His expression darkened the moment he saw the person next to me, his face instantly turning icy. "Who's he?" he demanded. My friend had dashed back to the hot pot spot to grab something she'd left behind, leaving me and her younger brother waiting outside. Darren's tone dripped with arrogance, but I didn't bother explaining. I snapped back, "What's it to you? What are you even playing at now?" Darren's haughty demeanor was unchanged. "Excuse me, but I don't think she wants to talk to you," interjected my friend's younger brother Tyson, stepping in tall and composed. Darren shot him a cold glare. "I'm her boss. You have no right to butt into our conversation." I quickly fired back, "I've already quit. You're not my boss anymore, and there's nothing I want to discuss with you." Darren's face flushed with fury, and he roared, "You're still an employee until I approve your resignation." Tyson let out a mocking laugh. "Sir, I take it you don't know a lick about labor laws," his words dripping with sarcasm. Before Tyson could finish, Darren's fist flew toward him. Tyson barely dodged the blow, the punch grazing his cheek and leaving a red mark. The impact was clear. Darren had put every ounce of his strength into it. Tyson, only 20 and full of pride, wanted to fight back, but when he saw me behind him, he held back, covering his face with his hand. I rushed over, checking his cheek. "You okay? Does it hurt?" Tyson's eyes, red with anger and hurt, met mine. Seeing he wasn't seriously hurt, I felt a surge of guilt. My friend had asked her younger brother, a university student from another city, to come along, and now he was injured because of me. I glared at Darren with equal parts blame and anger. "We're done, all right? From now on, we're nothing but strangers. If you ever harass me again, I'll report you for stalking." Darren froze, caught off guard by my words. He glared at Tyson as if contemplating shoving him aside to grab my hand, but Tyson quickly blocked him. Realizing he was at a disadvantage, Darren's tone softened a bit. "Can't we just sit down and talk this through?" he pleaded, his usual arrogance replaced by desperation. I simply looked away, my voice cold and distant. There's nothing left to talk about. I grabbed Tyson's arm and walked away, leaving Darren standing there, fists clenched. After the whole ordeal, I decided to thank Tyson by treating him to a meal, which he accepted gladly. But Darren just couldn't leave me alone. He showed up again, soaked from the rain, his disheveled hair clinging to his face, looking like a man abandoned by the world, eyes filled with pain. I know I was wrong, he mumbled, his voice trembling. I was just so pissed when you left without a word. That's why I acted out. Even now, he tried to justify himself, but I cut him off firmly. I'm not interested in your excuses. We're done. I told you if you show up again, I'll call the cops. So, are you leaving on your own, or should I make you? Darren hesitated, as if wanting to say more. You done? Tyson's voice interrupted, his hair slightly tousled as if he'd just rolled out of bed. Clearly a deliberate move to piss Darren off. I chose not to expose his intent, and Darren's face darkened further as he glared at Tyson. Why is he here? Darren spat. Tyson raised an eyebrow. Why wouldn't I be? Didn't you say your ex should be out of my hair? Darren's expression twisted into something ugly as he muttered, You told me you loved me. I shot back, Listen, you always hid stuff and lied to me. When the truth finally came out, you brushed it off with some lame excuse, not even bothering to explain properly. What is this love you claim to have? You come back acting like your love is some grand gesture that'll make me forget everything. Do you really think I'll keep orbiting around you like I used to? I can't live like that. It's just ridiculous. Darren, cornered by my questions, was about to defend himself, but I didn't let him finish. From the moment we reunited, after you dismissed years of lies with one careless sentence, it was over. Darren grabbed my shoulders, eyes shining with desperation. Listen, I love you. I really do. I looked at him coldly. You just don't love me. You only ever saw me as a toy to mess around with. Admit it, Darren. You don't love me. You only love yourself. You're coming back now because you can't stand the thought of losing me. His words faltered as he panicked, spewing a bunch of empty justifications in a desperate bid to prove his so-called love, but I wasn't interested. I told him to scram, slammed the door in his face, and walked back inside. My longtime roommate, Megan, who'd been with me since high school and had witnessed my whole saga with Darren from our college days onward, was there waiting when I got back. So, how'd it go? She asked, eyes lighting up with a mix of concern and curiosity. I sat down, confused for a moment. What do you mean? How'd it go? We broke up, obviously. Megan laughed incredulously. You really broke up? You're not going to come crawling back, are you? Her skeptical tone didn't surprise me. When I was with Darren, my whole life revolved around him. And every breakup, I'd been the one begging for reconciliation. Megan used to tease me, calling me hopeless, but this time I was dead serious. Darren was finished for good. Then Megan, with a mischievous glint in her eye, dropped the bomb. So, what about my bro Tyson? I glanced over at Tyson, who was quietly shoveling meatballs into our hot pot, looking every bit the caring, down-to-earth guy, handsome, determined, and all that. He's a great guy, really, but we're not a match. Besides, he's way too young for my taste, I replied firmly. Megan's expression turned cautious as she prodded further. So what if you think about him? I quickly cut her off. Stop talking nonsense. Tyson's off the table. Tyson had just stepped into the kitchen, and I let out a sigh of relief as Megan dropped the topic. What a shame, though. He's had a crush on you for ages, Megan teased, and I nearly choked on my water. Seriously? He used to scoop me up from school all the time in high school just to see me, I admitted with a rueful smile. Tyson, having just returned from the kitchen, gave a small shrug, and with that, the conversation shifted. After our hot pot dinner, Megan and her bro helped me clean up, and then Megan and I launched into a full-on bestie chat while Tyson quietly sat in the corner scrolling on his phone. That evening, Megan decided to crash at our place since it had been forever since we had a proper catch-up. Tyson, however, chose to head back to his dorm. Later, when Megan went to shower, I walked Tyson to the door to see him off. Just as I was about to say goodbye and lock up, Tyson reached out his long arm, shutting the door with a solid thud, trapping me between him and the door. He leaned against it, his clear, intense eyes locked onto mine. The guy who was usually sunny and approachable now carried an almost predatory air. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a grown ass adult, he said, his ears reddening as his gaze held mine with determination. Megan's earlier words about Tyson's longtime crush echoed in my head, and for a moment I was completely at a loss for words. Tyson straightened up, as if dreading a rejection. Catch you tomorrow, he mumbled hastily before darting off in a flurry. After that near confession, Tyson seemed to find every excuse to start up a conversation or engineer accidental encounters. I had lost count of how many times that month I'd seen him trailing behind me. One day, rubbing my temples in exasperation, I finally said, "Don't you have classes? Why are you always following me around?" Tyson widened his eyes innocently. Aren't you on break? I smacked my forehead, realizing I'd been grinding so hard, I'd completely forgotten students even get breaks. Having watched Tyson grow up, I couldn't just outright reject him, so I gently suggested he do something meaningful with his time. The subtext was loud and clear. Back off. Maybe I was still nursing wounds from my past, but I wasn't ready to jump into something new just yet. Besides, Tyson was my best friend's younger brother, a kid I'd seen grow up, and hurting him wasn't something I could stomach. When I mentioned it to Megan, she brushed it off entirely, even going on to gossip about how much drama Tyson and I were stirring up. Just when I thought Tyson would finally settle down after returning to campus, he went and rented an apartment directly across from mine. One day, I opened my door and there he was, standing right opposite me, grinning cheekily. "What a freaking coincidence," he said. But I knew it wasn't a coincidence at all. Tyson was like an overly clingy presence I just couldn't shake. There were moments when I'd firmly tell him to back off, but like some indestructible cockroach, he'd always inch his way closer again. This endless cycle left me both frustrated and helpless. The only upside was that having Tyson move in next door meant I could conveniently borrow his top-notch cooking skills. Mine were barely edible, and Darren wasn't any better in the kitchen. Tyson's cooking always smelled amazing, like he'd trained at some professional culinary school. Every time that irresistible aroma wafted over from his place, my resolve crumbled and I'd end up wandering over in our odd, neighborly setup built on shared meals. Over time, Tyson and I grew closer, as the scars from my relationship with Darren began to fade. Just faint memories, really. I started sending out resumes, landed a new job, and focused on building a life on my own. Once I got back into work, Tyson made it a point to pick me up every day after work. At first, I told him not to bother, but he insisted until our relationship settled into this weird, in-between stage. More than friends, but not quite lovers. Tyson never pushed for more, just being super kind and gentle, careful not to add any pressure. Then, one evening, on my way home from work, I was accosted by a drunken thug who started harassing me. Before I could react, Tyson appeared and, without hesitation, punched the guy several times until the cops had to break it up. Tyson walked away from the brawl with a nasty gash in his face. And as I tended to his wound, he sat there silently, staring at me intently. When I moved my hand away, he grabbed it and, in a steady yet gentle voice, confessed, "I was so damn scared of what had happened if I didn't protect you." I couldn't help but be moved, so I said yes. Tyson wrapped me in a tight hug, grinning like a spoiled rich kid who'd just gotten his way. Later on, at a class reunion, I ran into Darren again. The same slick guy who had always cared about appearances now looked utterly defeated, slumped on a couch, drinking way too much. He was a shadow of the man I once knew. A few old classmates even mentioned that his family's company was in steep decline and that Darren had lost all motivation. His family had already started grooming someone new as the heir. After the reunion wrapped up, I waited at the door for Tyson to pick me up. As I stepped outside, Darren, reeking of booze, approached me. Just as he opened his mouth to say something, Tyson's car pulled up. Darren froze, his face falling into a sad, almost friend-like expression as he asked, "Are you with him now?" I slid into the passenger seat of Tyson's ride and shot Darren one last look. "The past is the past," I said coolly. "What's meant to be will be. Let it go. I wish you happiness, all right?" Tyson leaned over to buckle my seatbelt, and in the rearview mirror, I saw Darren covering his face, crouching down like a lost kid, sobbing in regret. But as we all know, there's no medicine for regret in this world. And that, in a nutshell, is the wild, messy saga of how I learned that love, no matter how grand or painful, can't be faked, and how sometimes you just gotta say later, dude, to the past and move on with your life.